So C for fork.
Number 5, I got C.
Okay, that's good.
Technician answers that silicone, that says that silicone brake grease can be used to lubricate the shoe contact ledges. Technician B says the silicone brake grease, lithium brake grease or anti-seize compound can be used as brake lubricant. I got both.
Okay, first 6 questions are C. Okay, so since I said that, you know that this one isn't, right?
Could be.
Wheel cylinders are being discussed. Tech A says that the wheel cylinder is not leaking fluid, it is okay. Tech B says that wheel cylinders often require further inspection.
Would it be C?
It would be B, B over.
Yeah, B. Just because it's not leaking doesn't mean it's good. Okay, it could have other issues, so just B.
Old brake shoes are often returned to the manufacturer when new friction material is installed. These old shoes are usually called the core.
Yeah, you guys know that, right? Any old part, doesn't matter what it is, they call it a core, okay? If you go to buy a part somewhere for something and they want the old one back, it's called a core no matter what it is. Whether it's a battery, whether it's an alternator, whether it's brakes, whatever, okay? Okay.
Technician A says that when repairing brakes, it is good practice to inspect the backing plate for a bent or cracked structure. Technician B says that the pads of the backing plate should be lubricated with heavy grease before installing new shoes. Which technician is correct? A?
Just A, yeah, not the heavy grease, not wheel bearing grease, they don't want you to use wheel bearing grease on it. All right, last one.
Technician A says to use
Masking.
mastering kit temporarily over the lining material to help prevent getting grease on the lining. Technician B says that the grease on the brake lining can cause the brakes to grab. Which technician is it both?
Mm-hmm. So if you look through the book, you'll probably see that one somewhere over there where the guy was putting masking tape on the brake shoes when he was installing them. Just because your hands are gonna get dirty and you might get grease on them, it just wants to keep them clean. And you can just pull the tape off before it's done, okay? And yes, grease could cause the brakes to grab, even though it might sound like it would cause them to not work. Okay, sometimes it has the opposite effect. All right. If there's anything new on here.
True.
Which one? Where? One?
One, yeah. Okay, that should be true, right? Yeah. That was in one of these spots here, I don't remember which one. Sometimes brake drums are held on by, okay. Don't worry about it. Old brake shoes, core, yeah, we did that. The drum brake on one side is dragging, which of these could not be the cause?
Broken retracting spring.
Aaron says
Not cause.
Not cause. Air is a good answer, I think, isn't it? Would air cause a brake to drag? I'm thinking that's probably the good answer there. What's this guy doing?
A.
Shoe hold down spring replacement or removal, yeah, okay. First step, just mark the drum left or right so you don't mix them up. Bolts are used to attach the wheel cylinder to the backing plate. Sometimes clips are used to hold the wheel cylinder to the backing plate. Both of those are, that could be either one, yeah. We did that one. Most experts recommend replacing all the brake drum hardware, including the springs. We talked about that. It's a good idea to do that, yeah. We did that one. Vacuum plate should be replaced with two contact pads or worn more than, I don't know, what is it? Let's see,
It's 10.
16 for 2 millimeters. Okay. Okay. You can do whatever you want with the quizzes that we've done for the week, okay? The ones you need to keep and look at for the test is gonna be starting right here, okay? So you might wanna separate those so you don't get confused and you're not studying stuff that is not gonna be on the test, okay? Okay. All right. 105. You wanna go through the questions on 1210? I guess we could do that. I'm not gonna read them, I'm just gonna give you the answers. Go ahead and mark them in the book, that way you have them in case you want them. 1 is B. 2 is D, 3 is C. 4 is D, 5 is C, 6 is B, 7 is C, 8 is C, 9 is C, and 10 is D. All right, disc brakes, that's what we're going for next. And then 106 just talks about brake service, so.
Real quick, on the parts and operation, it says disc brakes are used on front wheels of late model vehicles and on the rear wheels of an increasing number of automobiles. What do you mean by increasing, like newer?
It means basically that newer vehicles most of them have 4-wheel disc brakes. So that's kind of what they're alluding to there. You just don't see drum brakes that much anymore,
Gotcha.
okay? So again, the most important part really is from here forward. Don't see a whole lot of drum brakes. Okay, parts and operation, we're gonna go through construction pads, how these work, assembly methods. I'm sure nobody said they'd ever done drum brakes before. I'm sure somebody's done disc brakes, or at least or at least seen it done or whatever, right? They're pretty easy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably one of the easiest things you can do on a car, as far as just a normal service. What's that? If, most of the time, you're gonna either replace the rotors or machine the rotors, or put them on the brake lathe and cut them, so you get fresh surface on them. But, if you're just replacing them, it's a whole lot easier, because you don't have to put them on the machine and cut them. But, it's actually a pretty simple procedure. You can do front brakes on a car in under an hour. So, pretty easy. Not much to it. Not really much you can mess up on it. There's just some things you need to be aware of when you do it, okay? Okay, we're gonna talk about the difference between a fixed and floating or sliding caliper. If the caliper is a floating or sliding caliper, it's gonna be a single piston, okay? Because the caliper has to float or slide in order to apply the other pad, okay? If it's a fixed caliper, it's going to have 4, 6 pistons, meaning pistons on both sides, okay? So that way it's fixed, that means it doesn't move. So the pads both get pushed by pistons, okay, rather than sliding. So that's the difference there. Brake rotors, disc brake designs, and rear disc brakes. Okay. Disc brakes use a piston to squeeze the friction material on both sides of the rotating disc or rotor. That should be pretty obvious. The advantages are they are self-adjusting. They don't give you much of a problem with brake pull. They resist fade much better than drum brakes do. Disadvantage is no servo action. Sometimes you'll get a brake squeak out of them. So, brake dust. Poor park brake performance. Disc brakes don't provide as good a park brake as drum brakes do. Okay, they still work pretty good, but the drums actually work quite a bit better. So if you have a car with rear drum brakes, the park brake's gonna work better, but not really a big deal. Okay, typical disc brake assembly. This is, again, one that you probably won't see that much. They really don't use this system anymore. This is the one with the tapered roller bearings. This is the one where you would have to take the nut off, the washer, pull the rotor off in order to either replace it or machine it, and then clean repack those bearings, put new grease seal and all that stuff. The cars now, they're not really set up like this anymore, which is nice. You know that all you have to do is pull the caliper off, caliper bracket off, and the rotors come off, right? They might have a little Torx head screw or Phillips head screw on them that hold them to the hub, but they come off pretty easy, okay? And you don't have to worry about the bearings. You don't have to worry about the preload. You don't have to worry about greasing them. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff because they all have a sealed hub and bearing inside the wheel hub, okay? So this you don't really see anymore. All right, disc brakes can absorb and dissipate a great deal of heat. During this demonstration, the brakes were gently applied as the engine drove the front wheels until the rotor became nice and cherry red. During normal brake operation, rotor temperature can exceed 350 degrees, about 1500 degrees, if you're really hard on your brakes. Okay. This is what I was going to show you on a floating or sliding caliper. Single piston, okay? We saw this yesterday. This is your single piston caliper, all right? That's what most cars have, okay? When your brake fluid gets applied here, pushes the piston, pushes this pad into the rotor, and then the caliper slides this way to apply this one, okay? So if these slides, or whatever this caliper floats on, gets corroded or stuck for whatever reason, you're gonna have a problem. This pad's gonna wear, this one won't. Brake's not gonna work that good, okay? So make sure that those calipers, slides are lubed when you do them. You take those pins out when you do the brakes, right? You take the pins out of the caliper in the back, and they got like brake grease on them. Make sure you put brake grease on those, make sure those slide, okay? All right, slots and holes in the brake linings help prevent gas and water fade, I believe. Let me see here. Okay. I'm gonna do everybody a big favor, okay? You need to pay attention. As we go through this, I'm gonna tell you what's gonna be on the test. That's gonna be one of the questions. Okay? No reason to mess this up, okay? This question is gonna be on the test. No, that's when our paper test will be on it. So we're gonna do Monday that we normally would do today. We're not gonna have enough time to do it today, okay? Not this, I'm sorry, not this question, this one.
Slots and holes in the brake
Okay.
lines help prevent gas.
The question's gonna say something to the effect of what are the purpose of the slots and the holes in the brake linings? And what's the answer?
Help prevent gas and water fade.
Okay. If anybody misses the first question on the test, you're not with us. Okay. There is a thing in your brake caliper called a square cut O-ring, and that only seals the hydraulic brake fluid, also retracts the caliper piston when the brake pedal is released. Okay, see where it says applied? Caliper piston goes out a little bit, right, to apply the brakes. You see what happens to this O-ring? it kind of distorts, kind of moves with that piston. When you release the brake, it helps pull it back, okay? These are just clips that they have on some types of brakes, just keep the pad from rattling or keeps the brake from squeaking, okay? They call them anti-rattle clips sometimes, okay? Different cars will have different ones. This one happens to have them at both ends here. On some cars, especially on the rear, I don't know if you've ever seen this before, but you can actually change the brake pads without even taking the caliper off. You can just take one bolt out and it will flip up out of the way. You can get the pads out. You can literally change the brake pads on the rear of these cars in 5 minutes. Okay, manages, we know what that is. All right. Caliper. Use the hydraulic pressure to create mechanical force required to move the brake pads into contact with the brake rotor. The splash field we talked about, all that does is just keep water and contaminants off of the brake rotor while you're driving down the road. Rear disc brake caliper attaches to a mounting bracket on the rear axle housing if it does have rear brakes, or rear disc brakes, I mean. The lining of a disc brake part of an assembly is called the brake pad. Okay, linings are the same thing as the friction material, whether it's a drum or a disc, okay? Some backing plates have tabs that bend over to hold the calipers tight. You don't have to worry about this one. This is the old type that we saw at first with the bearings that you got to pack and all that stuff. Don't have to worry about that. Let's see. Other ones will have tabs with holes in them that spin slide through. This is mostly what you're going to see. Other ones have a retainer clip, locates the pad by locking the caliper piston. Okay. Most brake pads have wear indicators on them. You've seen those? It's, all it does is it's a little metal thing, looks kind of like that. And they put this on the brake pad when it gets to about, I don't know, 3 or 4 millimeters. And what that's going to do is that's just going to hit the rotor. It's just to let you know your brakes are worn out, okay? It's just going to cause a little squeak, and you usually go away when you hit the brake. You'll normally hear it when you're just barely rolling, not with your foot not on the brake, and sometimes that noise will go away when you hit the brake, okay? That's telling you the pads are worn out. Let's see, yeah, no, that's not it. So then we're going to show you a picture of, okay. So that would be just this little thing right here that's usually on, it's only usually on the inboard pad. Okay, so you're not going to have a wear indicator on both brake pads, okay? One on each side. So as soon as this gets worn down enough to where it hits this, it keeps you from having to wear your brakes completely out, where you're going metal to metal. This backing against the rotor. If that happens, obviously the rotor's no good. So there's a good shot of it right there. Here's your wear indicator, right? It's got plenty of room there as the pads wear. When it gets down to a certain point, that is going to touch the rotor, make a little squeaky noise, telling you it's time to replace your brakes. Now, if you're one of those people that drives around with the radio up all the time, you'll never hear that. I was actually guilty of that myself one time. I used to drive around with the radio playing, you know, kind of loud. Not crazy, but enough to where you'd never hear that. And I actually wore the brakes completely out on my truck that I was driving. One day I felt them grinding. And I was like, really? Because it had actually worn all the way, the pad all the way down to where it was hitting the backing plate. But
Some of them are bad though, right?
what's that?
Like some of them like squeak really bad, like you're screaming.
sometimes disc brakes do squeak. Sometimes, yeah. And sometimes it's just not because the car needs brakes or they're worn out, but because the pads are moving. That's what causes that squeak. Okay?
How long should brake pads last? A year, depending on the driver?
Yeah, there's no way to tell. There's no like, you should replace your brakes every whatever.
A
No way
decent
to tell.
driver, yourself?
What's that?
Yourself? Like what, a year, 2 years?
Well, I mentioned this the other day. I got almost 200,000 miles out of the front brakes on my car. And it still has the original rear brakes on it with 265,000 on it. So the car's over 10 years old. So it just depends on the car, depends on who's driving it.
Alright.
Some people need brakes every year on their car. Some people can go 5 years without replacement brakes. It just depends. Depends on the car, depends on the driver. Okay, how do you drive?
Yeah.
And if you're driving a truck and you're towing, obviously a lot harder on the brakes. So there's no real, time or interval like an oil change or something like that. It's just whenever it needs it. They should be checked every oil change. That way they don't get to the point where they're completely worn out and it costs you more money because you got to replace rotors or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So no real time or mileage for them. Some cars have electrical wear indicators. You'll see that on some European cars, sometimes Mercedes, BMW, stuff like that, Volkswagen. Sometimes those will have those to where if this does the same thing as your mechanical wear indicator that hits the rotor. As soon as this little electrode, the pad wears far enough for this to hit the rotor, it'll turn a light on the dash that will tell you that the brakes are worn out. So you actually have a brake warning light on some cars. Okay? Uh-huh, yeah. You seen that? Yeah.
We're picking up a car and it says brakes and it's changed, so it's changing.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Okay. Again, this is the same thing we saw in the drum. The linings can either be bonded to the backing plate or riveted. Those are the three ways they would do it. Another question on the test was going to ask you about this. Riveted disc brake pads are often quieter than bonded ones.
Riveted are quieter than bonded?
Typically, they are, yeah. All right. Brake rotors. Provides a friction surface for the brake pads to rub against. Either solid or vented rotor. What's the difference? How do you know if you have a solid or a vented rotor?
On the side.
What's that?
On the side.
Yeah, just look at the picture in the book. Is there a picture there? There's probably one here too. right?
Yeah, 1217.
Yeah, okay. Most of them are like this. The only difference is if you have a vented rotor, it's got these little like cooling pins in between, okay? It's the only difference. All right. Next question coming up on the test is going to deal with caliper slides if they're corroded or whatever. So when we talk about that in a few minutes, you'll need to keep that in mind. All right? Fixed caliper gets its name from the fact that the caliper is rigidly mounted to the suspension. It does not need to move, float, slide, anything like that because it has pistons on both sides of the caliper, okay? Only single piston calipers are going to float or slide. When the brakes are applied, the pistons extend from the calipers, brake pads equally, both sides of the rotor. Fixed calipers are relatively large, heavy, enables them to absorb and dissipate great amounts of heat. You'll see the fixed calipers on cars with high-performance brakes or something that needs a really heavy-duty brake system, okay? They do add unsprung weight to the vehicle. Okay. The floating or sliding caliper design. It's free to move within a limited range on the anchor plate, solidly mounted to the vehicle's suspension. When the brakes are applied, the caliper piston moves out of its bore and applies the inner pad. At the same time, the caliper body moves in the opposite direction on the anchor plate and applies the outer pad. Floating and sliding calipers are low cost, simple construction, compact size, and that's what you're going to see the most of. The body of the floating caliper does not make direct metal-to-metal contact with the anchor plate. Instead, it's supported by bushings and or O-rings that allow it to float or slide on guide pins, locating sleeves attached to the anchor plate. They depend on proper lubrication in order to work properly. Unlike a floating caliper, the body of a sliding caliper mounts directly metal-to-metal contact with the anchor plate. Instead of pins or bushings, it moves on what they call cast rays mounted or machined into the caliper body. Like floating calipers, sliding calipers depend on good lubrication for proper operation. Okay, I'm going to ask you a question. If the caliper slides or whatever allows that caliper to float or move, it's corroded or doesn't have enough lubrication on it, what happens?
One brake pad will wear out and the other one won't.
Okay, you're going to have uneven brake pad wear, right? The brake pad with the side with the piston is going to be worn more than the other one because it doesn't allow the caliper to move to apply that outer pad. Okay? Okay. That's going to show up too. Okay? Yeah.
So on some new cars or regular cars, when you see them, they have like their calipers all yellow and stuff. What's that usually for? Like the whole disc is all yellow. You notice that? Even on new cars when you buy them, like if they've been sitting for a while, the brakes get, the discs get all yellow.
Oh, you mean if it's been sitting for a while?
Yeah. It gets all
They're
yellow.
actually rusting is what they're doing, yeah. Yeah, that's just a fine layer of rust. Yep, I've seen that. So, after you drive the car a few miles, hit the brakes a few times, that goes away, it's not a problem, okay? Different parts. There's gonna be a question on here about a dust boot too, I believe, let's see.
Yes, it looks like a rubber thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Make a note of this. It's going to be a question that says something like advantages or disadvantages of disc brakes. Here's what you need to remember. Disc brakes are not self-energizing. Okay? I should see everybody writing when I'm telling you this, because if you know these things, you will do just fine on the test. Hydraulic force on the piston is applied to the inboard pad. Caliper housing itself, the reaction of the piston pushing against the rotor causes the entire caliper to move toward the inside of the vehicle. We saw this before, okay? Your hydraulic force on this side causes the caliper to slide this way and apply this pad. Yes?
You said it have no what?
I'm sorry?
You said it's not so what?
Energizing.
Disc brakes are not self-energizing. Disc brakes have many advantages. One of them is not an advantage, and that's the answer. If you would like to move up a row or two, so you can see better, hear better, whatever you want to do, feel free to do that, okay? since you're the farthest away, you can have this spot or this spot if you would feel more comfortable or feel like it would do you good.
That's my spot.
Not when you're not here.
That's my spot.
If you're sitting back there, that spot's open.
That's my spot.
You can't have two, sorry. Caliper flex and cause tapered wear of the brake lining. Sometimes you pull the brake pad off and you'll see it like this. More here, less here. What's going on here? Caliper's just flexing. Typically not a problem and you don't see that too much, but if you do see that, that's what's going on, okay? Single piston floating caliper in this design, the entire caliper moves, which they do on most of them. Supported by pins or bushings, those need to be lubricated with fresh brake grease. Low drag caliper. I don't think we need to worry about that. All right. What a view of a typical sliding brake caliper. Again, there's not much to the caliper. There's typically only maybe 4 pieces if you include the caliper body itself. You just have the seal, boot, and the piston. This is just the dust boot. Sometimes when you do brakes, you'll notice that this dust boot sometimes will be cracked when you compress it. Typically not a problem, okay? But that dust boot can be replaced by itself. Takes a special tool, it's called a boot driver. You may see that on a test as well. Okay, this is a sliding caliper that actually just slides on these machined ways, they call it. These need to be lubricated as well so the caliper can move. Rear disc brakes are pretty common on cars now, okay? Self-adjust, no brake fade, good deal. The bad news is they don't make a very good park brake, but typically not that big of a deal. The rear park brake on a rear disc brake system can provide either a single piston caliper or a drum brake in the rear rotors. Anybody ever seen that? Anybody who have done rear brakes on a car where the park brake is actually brake shoes? Looks like a drum brake system. It's actually a combination of both. So we'll get to that, I hope. I think there's something in here about that.
Do you have a video on that, maybe?
Possibly.
Yeah, it's on the 1/12/22, figure 10529, exploded view of a typical rear brake.
Oh, yeah,
brake
yeah, yeah,
brake
there
with
you go.
Integral parking brake.
1222, yeah. Okay, so it's a brake rotor and a brake drum all in one. Because drum brakes work better for park brakes, somebody came up with the idea of, well, we could just do both. Let's see. There you go. So the rotor is actually kind of a brake drum as well as a brake rotor. It's going to have brake shoes just like a regular drum brake system inside here. So when you pull the rotor up, you'll see the park brake shoes. Normally these things will last for a long time because you don't apply the park brake when the car's rolling, right? So how are these brake shoes going to wear out? They pretty much never wear out.
They wouldn't wear out with like time and temperature and weather.
Yeah, they'll eventually maybe crack or something like that. But as far as the linings wearing out, it's just not possible because you don't use this when you're driving. When the car stops, that's when you set the brake, right?
Yeah.
So all it does is just apply those brake shoes to the inside of the rotor. So they typically just never wear out.
And it's assembled differently too. It's on the top and bottom instead of side to side.
Yeah, right. Yep.
Now, are they marked as well too, the top and bottom?
I think these are both the same.
Okay. And
But yeah, you're right, on a regular drum brake system, the shoes would be like this, not like this,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Now, I see that there's 3 springs. Does that one only have 3 springs? Because in the other drum design, it can have,
Yeah.
different numbers.
Yeah, these don't have to do the same job because the car's gonna be stopped when you apply those. You know what I mean? They don't have any servo action, they don't have anchor pin, they don't need any of the other stuff. They just basically need springs to hold them onto the thing. So, yeah. Okay. 2 methods. You're gonna have a single caliper or a drum and hat rotor, they call it. Okay. The end. You sure you wanna hang out back here? You don't wanna move? Okay. You don't have to, I'm just trying to help you out.
Thank you.
I do wanna have 7 students at graduation, okay? I don't want anybody to spend 4 months of their life in here and not make it, all right? Who knows what number 1 is?
C,
What's that?
the square cut O-ring.
Right, it is, yeah. Right.
It's on 1213.
I just wondered if everybody was paying attention on that. Everybody know what the answer to number 1 is? C, right? Okay. Okay, everybody done? Should be?
Yeah.
All right.
We can start.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, one, C.
Oh,
Yeah, we
yeah.
did one.
Okay, start with two then.
Alright. Two technicians are discussing the reason that the brake fluid level in the master cylinder dropped. Technician A says that it might be normal due to the wear of the disc brake pads. Technician B says this is part of the wear compensation feature of disc brakes. Which technician is correct? A?
All right, is it normal for the brake fluid level to go down in the master cylinder as the brakes wear?
Yes.
Yeah.
Fluid's gotta go somewhere, right?
Yes.
As the brakes wear, the caliper piston has to travel farther, takes more fluid, right? So A is good. This is part of wear compensation feature, that's normal as well. Okay? Both of them, yeah. Uh-huh.
Number 3, technician A says that the caliper mounts to the steering nut. Technician B says that the caliper mounts to a mounting bracket or rear disc brake plate. Which technician is correct? I put A. It's both.
Okay, everybody got their eyes and ears open? This question is gonna show up on the test.
Where do you find what technician B said?
Where do you find it?
Is it in rear brakes? Rear disc brakes? 1, 2.
You should see it on 1214.
Where?
Should be on 1214. Should be.
It mounts to the support bracket on the axle flange or suspension. It's under, disc brake construction and the caliper section. On page 12.
Okay.
All right, number 4.
Technician A says that some brake pads have Tampa A vibration. Technician B says that pad wear indicators are required by law on all new vehicles.
It's A.
A.
Apple.
A, yeah, wear indicators are not required by law. They don't care if you have wear indicators on your pads or not.
Wire, brakes, motor, put me to.
That should be an obvious answer. You shouldn't even need to take a class to figure that out. Then it means, yes, age and cooling, okay.
Number 6, technician A said that all vehicles equipped with rear disc brakes using parking brake that is integrated in the caliper. Technician B says that all vehicles equipped with rear disc brakes use a small drum brake inside a rear rotor for parking brake. I put B.
You put what?
B.
B?
Is it
Yeah,
both?
I think it's C.
Okay. Again, here we're gonna go. Here's the problem.
Oh.
It could have either one. They're both wrong, okay? All vehicles do not have the brake drum inside the rotor. All vehicles do not have a parking brake with integrated caliper. It's one or the other. So the word all from both of those technicians makes them both wrong. Okay?
Yeah.
All right.
Technician A says the brake discs are self-adjusting and the brake pedal height should not become lower than the brake disc. Should not become lower as the discs brake pads wear. Technician B says that the disc brake pads wear the level of brake fluid in the master cylinder reservoir drops. I put both.
They are both correct, yes.
a floating type disc brake caliper. Tech A says that caliper slides are corroded and have wear more than the other half in the same wheel brake. B says that if a caliper slide is corroded, reduced braking may occur.
What is reduced
I
braking?
mean, I chose both.
This question is also gonna show up somewhere else.
What is reduced braking may occur? Like what are they
Reduced
trying-
braking,
Yeah, like you can
that
brake
means
less,
it's not gonna stop as well.
braking
It's not gonna
less.
stop as well because if the caliper can't slide because of corrosion or not enough lubrication on it, it's only gonna apply the one pad, not the other one, because the caliper has to float or slide to apply the other pad, okay? Reduced braking just means the brakes aren't gonna work as well. You're only gonna have one pad really doing most of the work.
A four piston caliper is used in what type of caliper design, fixed?
Okay, if it has more than one piston, going to be a fixed caliper. Doesn't need to move if it has more than one piston, because you have one on, or two, or three on each side. Does anybody not understand that? Okay, you get that, right? The caliper doesn't need to move if there's pistons on both sides of it, because it can push on both sides of the rotor with one pad here, right? So the caliper doesn't need to move. If it's a single piston, it's gonna be a floating or sliding, all right? Okay.
Oh, me. A vehicle equipped with rear disc brakes may use a blank to operate the parking brake.
See, that,
Yeah, either. Let's
Bless you.
Yes, either one, yeah. Might have the lever and screw if it's an integrated caliper, or the brake fuse system if it's a drum hat. Either one of them. I'm sorry,
Okay, 9 is B.
yes, it is. 9 is B.
Only need a single. Like a single is floating and sliding, right?
I'm sorry.
Caliber.
Yeah, if it's a single piston, it's either a floating or sliding caliper, either one. If it's fixed, it's going to have more than one piston, 2, 4, 6, whatever. Okay, gonna be an even number. All right. This question is going to be on the test, I already mentioned that to you. What's the answer?
C.
Okay,
This is true, a fixed caliper.
Flex is less?
Yeah, flex is less.
yep. Because it doesn't move. Yeah, good. Okay,
This brake design
B.
incorporates solo.
absolutely.
You did that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's on to 4. This brake design incorporates servo action, no, false.
No, it doesn't, that's only drums, right?
Technician A says that riveted disc brake pads are often quieter than bonded disc brake pads, true. Technician B says that integrally molded disc brake pads are molded into holes in the steel backing of the pads. Which technician is correct? Both?
This question's gonna be on the test too, okay?
It's both.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
5, 5, 5, let's verify that, should be C, yeah, uh-huh. Okay, 6,
Disc brakes have superior cooling ability compared to drum brakes.
Yeah, I guess.
true,
They have
why?
cooling passages and they can be vented.
Because, what you said, that.
Because what he said. Okay,
Well,
And
they,
they're close.
they need to.
a drum is encapsulating the brake
Yeah.
shoes, right?
Yeah.
So you got all this heat there, right? Okay, obviously disc brakes cool better,
Yeah.
all right.
Two technicians are discussing a floating type disc brake caliper. Technician A says that if the caliper slides are corroded, one pad.
Oh,
yeah,
this
we
is
did
the
this
same
one.
question, isn't
Yeah,
it?
we did this one.
Yeah, it's both of them.
Disc brakes have many advantages, some which are listed below. Which of the following they are self-energizing?
This question is gonna be on the test.
B.
Self-energizing.
They are not self-energizing. It says which one does not apply, okay?
Technician A says the caliper mounts to the steering knuckle. We already did that one too.
This section's gonna be on the test, okay? Okay,
The fixed caliper design is best for heavy-duty use. That's more for, like you said, they were more for like race cars, so like, yeah, I guess street.
heavy duty or performance applications, yeah. Okay. All right.
Answers for the book.
What's that? Okay, yeah, let's do that. One we already know,
Square cut O-ring.
C, yeah. Slots are often used in brake pads because they reduce brake fade. We did that one, which is not a component of the disc brake system. Number 3, which one is not a component of the disc brake system?
Brake system.
Somebody, anybody.
Backing plate.
Yeah.
There is no
that's-
backing plate,
That's
that's
for
for
drum,
drums,
yeah.
right? We did 4, it's both of them. We did 5, that's both of them. We did 6, that's both of them. 7 is both of them. 8 we did not do. What do you think about that?
Sliding.
Which type of disc brake caliper may leak brake fluid more often?
Would it be fixed because how many pistons?
Okay, good job. You're thinking. The fixed caliper, why? Because it has more than one piston, more than one area to leak, right? Because each piston has to have fluid line, right? Absolutely. Okay. Number 9. We did that one. They're both wrong. And obviously a 4-piston caliper is fixed. Okay, let's go ahead and take the morning break and we'll come back a couple minutes after 10 and go on to the next step here.